Japan, eating and leaving without paying, or dine and dashing, isn't illegal, at least in some situations. Picture this. Tom is in Japan, enjoying his long-awaited vacation, and he just ordered his favorite food, fried rice. But when it's time to pay, he realizes he has no more money in his pocket. Panicked, when the employee turns around, Tom dashes out of the restaurant, effectively dine and dashing. Now, it may seem shocking when I tell you that what Tom just did isn't illegal in Japan. After all, he had just eaten and left without paying. But there have been people who have gotten away with this. In fact, in 2023, a man was even found innocent in a criminal trial. Now, if you start getting ideas on your own trip to Japan to eat as many free meals as you want, you might want to reconsider, because this story isn't done yet. We now switch our focus to John, who didn't watch until the end of the video. John also wanted to go to Japan and enjoy free meals just like Tom did. So he goes to Japan, heads to a local restaurant despite having no money and with no intention of paying. He orders fried rice. After he finished his food, John makes sure the employee is distracted before bolting out of the door without paying. However, unfortunately for John, what he just did constitutes fraud under Article 246 of the Criminal Code of Japan, meaning he could serve up to 10 years in jail time. So, what makes John guilty of fraud while Tom innocent? The answer lies in the Criminal Code of Japan, more specifically Article 246, which deals with the crime of fraud. Paragraph 1 of Article 246 states, "A person who deceives another person and causes them to hand over property shall be punished by imprisonment for up to 10 years. We can break this down into two critical parts: deceiving someone and causing them to hand over property. From this, we now know that for you to be found guilty of fraud in Japan, there are two conditions that need to be satisfied. Condition 1, deception, and Condition 2, causing the victim to hand you over their property. So, how would this apply to Tom and John? Let's start with Tom. Did Tom do anything that could qualify as deception? The first thing that comes to mind is the act of ordering food despite not having the money to pay for it. But if we look back, when Tom ordered the food, he had every intention of paying for it, and he only realized he didn't have any money in his pocket after he was done eating. So Tom ordering food simply cannot be an act of deception, because all he did was order food with the intention of paying for it later, which isn't deceiving, that's just ordering food. Therefore, the first condition cannot be satisfied, which means it's case closed. Tom is innocent. This outcome might feel strange for a lot of people, because when Tom realized he had no money, instead of consulting the employee, he ran away from the restaurant, which many may find morally questionable. But we have to keep in mind that we are approaching this from a purely legal perspective, and what's morally wrong isn't always punishable by law. Now it's John's turn. Just like Tom, John ordered food without the money to pay for it. But unlike Tom, John knew from the beginning that he wasn't going to pay, as he ordered with every intention of dine and dashing. When you order food in a restaurant, you're also implying that you intend to pay for the food, even if you don't explicitly say so. Therefore, the act of ordering food with no intention of paying while implying that you're going to pay later constitutes an act of deception. So in John's case, Condition 1 is satisfied. Moving on to Condition 2, causing the victim to hand over property. As a result of John's deception, the restaurant employee mistakenly believes John's going to pay for the food later, which causes the employee to hand him over the food, which is a form of property. Therefore, Condition 2 is satisfied. And just like this, John is guilty of fraud. Here's something interesting though. At this point, John hasn't even left the restaurant yet. But this doesn't change the fact that he's already committed fraud, because the crime had been completed the moment the food was handed over to him. So by the time he was done eating, fraud had already been long committed. But you might be wondering, what if John changes his mind here and decides to pay before leaving? Well, it might feel strange, but this still wouldn't change the fact that John had committed fraud. It's just that no one will ever know John had just committed fraud, because no one noticed his previous intent to not pay. Another question you might have is, if John were to attempt to escape at this point, but gets caught by the employee, couldn't John simply lie that he ordered with every intention of paying? Because if this were to be true, John would be innocent for the same reason Tom is innocent. This especially becomes an issue in a criminal trial, where all three of these conditions need to be proven in order for John, the defendant, to be found guilty. Because, as we know, we're all innocent until proven guilty. In Japan, just like many other countries, the burden of proof is on the prosecutor, whose job is to use evidence to prove to the judges that all conditions are satisfied. The standard of proof used in Japan is almost identical to the one used in the United States, the standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. This means that for John to be found guilty, the prosecutors would need to prove the existence of all conditions by proving enough evidence to convince the judges that John has indeed committed fraud. So if John is arguing that he initially was planning to pay but tried to run because he realized later on that he had no money, the prosecutor would need to provide evidence that suggests otherwise. This can be something like a written plan that was found on John's smartphone that details his dine and dashing plans, or a testimony from John's friend who knew of John's countless dine and dash schemes. These two pieces of evidence suggest that John never had the intention of paying from the beginning. So if the prosecutor were to present them to the judge, it may be enough to convince the judges that John deceived the employee and convict John of fraud. Before ending the video, I would like to emphasize that the content of this video is purely for educational purposes. Just because there's a loophole doesn't mean we should exploit it. So in case you realize you have no money to pay for your food, instead of running, try consulting the employee. I am sure that'll be the best course of action to take, both legally and ethically.